So how do we identify risk? I mean, this is a question we get asked a lot. How do I know which risks to track and to put into my risk register? How do I identify new risks and make sure I'm not missing anything important? Well, first, depending on your industry, there may be certain regulatory frameworks that you're subject to, and they may have suggested taxonomies or example risks for you to consider. For example, if you're doing a technology risk assessment based on the NIST standards, then there are risk topic areas that they suggest. Similarly, if you're a financial firm and you're subject to Basel III, then there's guidance from the Bank of International Settlements. Or if you're aligning with TCFD in your ESG program, that framework prescribes risks that you should include in your analysis. These are just a few examples. But if your activities are regulated, a good first step is to review the regulations in case there's any guidance on risks that you should include as a baseline. Next, a common approach is to consult various libraries of suggested risks. These can give you ideas to help you get started and also to help you feel comfortable that you're not missing anything important. For example, if you're doing a project risk assessment, your organization likely already has a standard set of project risks to consider, based on the type and the scope of the project. An organization may also have a standard set of risks they want each of their business units to consider. For example, each unit may be expected to evaluate their own credit risk, which with all the business unit scores then being used to roll up into an overall company risk score that gets tracked separately. Now, consulting firms and software products may provide risk libraries, as well as many insurance providers. For example, in the health sector, some healthcare liability providers have detailed risk taxonomies that they share with their clients. Now, I would caution, however, there are definitely some pitfalls in using risk libraries. They're very effective, I find, in project risk, but in other areas, organizations that rely on risk libraries or use them can often end up tracking too many risks. For me, they wouldn't be my primary strategy, but rather probably something I would use as a second step or later step to make sure that I'm not missing anything important. And that leads us to the next approach, which is a best practice in most cases. The approach is to have subject matter experts consider the objectives of your activity from two perspectives. First, they should think about and identify the risk events that, if they were to occur, would impact your ability to achieve each of your objectives. We call these risks to the objectives. Second, they should think about the risks from the objectives. Are any of your objectives taking you into new business areas that you haven't been before, and maybe they present new risks you haven't considered in the past? Are any of them going to be material to the organization? Now, to do this approach definitely takes some experience and business judgment. But that's the reality, really, of risk management. Other than some specific risks that you may have to include because of regulations, most of what you put in your risk register will be based on your business judgment. And finally, some of the other methods that organizations use to identify risks include polling their workforce, looking at past incidents that have actually occurred, and subscribing to external threat monitoring services.